Hi, this is Mark Helt. I'm in the CIT 260 class, and this is my individual project or final project presentation. Um, Currently, what our project was to do is to work on the Secrets of the Sea program and create a game. And my teammate was JC Ames. And so there are several criteria in which we need to accomplish. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everyone so that I can go ahead and knock out some of these the things that we need to do to present the program itself. So let me share my screen. Okay, on the screen here, as you look at this, the first criteria that we needed to cover, or that I needed to cover, was talking about static variables and instance of non-static variables. And as you look at the program, we've got several programs, obviously, but as you start out in the Secrets of the Sea, the main program, this is typically where you're going to see a lot of the main or the static type variables to start with. As you can see right here, we have the private static game, current game equals null. And then on top of that, we set up the main program, which calls out the start view, which is one of our view programs over here. And it calls that out by setting up the start program view, and then it starts that program. So as I go to that program, you would actually see that. Whereas if you look at an instance of a variable, that would be more in line with something like in here, where I have several of these particular instances of variables set up to do the calculations of the ammunition and so forth. And so you can see right here, this is the int, this total bullets, or equals per gun, and all this is set up from the very beginning. As you set up, the bullets per gun is 10, but the actual instance of that is down here also and up here, but it just kind of cascades down as it creates the various variables, so that I can call those out down here by system out print line, and it tells how many people, how many guns, and I'll demonstrate this later, how many bullets and kegs of powder are needed for the particular trip that we're going to be making on the boat. And so that's where we see the static variables and also the instance or the non-static variables in the program itself. The next two categories that I needed to cover was really the category of the arrays. When do we use an array versus an array list versus an enum setup? And in our program, in the category 2 and 3, we didn't create any arrays in our program, but to kind of really talk about those, I mean, the array is really strictly it sets up a list of what would be a common variable types, you could say, where it might be, let's say in a program you want to do an array of individuals and their ages or their social security numbers, or maybe it's you're working on a program for where people are setting up accounts in your system and you want the account numbers, things of that nature. That would be an array. An array list would be maybe several arrays put together in a list or in a 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional setup. I think that's where you would set those up. And then there's obviously the code that you would set up, which I don't have in any of our programs here. So it's really hard on that, and where we show the indexing of that and calling those variables and so forth to be able to set up the arrays. So, but that's what those are. And then like an enum, the setup on an enum is a little bit different because you're calling out, it's like a variable that's a certain data type that, what would you say? It's really more of it's a constant. It would be like setting up constant pieces of data within this enum variable, which would be something like whether it's months of the year, January, February, March, etc. And you just set those up, with the semicolons or commas between them, and then these are all built into that enum, and they're set as a constant data type. And so that's kind of what the enum is, and the differences between those. And when you would use those is really dependent upon the individual program and what you're setting up. As we kind of go forward, we can, you know, the next category that we really talked about was, you know, when do you, let's see, it would be how to throw, propagate, or catch custom routine errors and so forth. And as I do that, you can see right here in this particular program, which is my ammunition program, this was one that I had to create, was here's my try and catch. So as I come through the program, it calls out the quantity of munitions view. It sets this in motion. And this is where the start program goes from that other, you know, from the menu itself. And it comes down through here and it sets this up and says, you know, display the menu. You know, you're going to be setting up, figure out the ammunition. But it says get get people, try this first. And so it goes down here and it says on the public Boolean right here, get total people. And so it's running this routine of this calculation. And then it comes back up once there. Now, if this was not valid, then it would catch it and it would go to the control exception area and it would send that to that. But it comes down here, does the calculation, sets it up and shows you, you know, after it asks you the question of how many people, etc., then it would return you back to the menu after giving you the results of that. And so that's where you do the try catch. Now, if you start looking at the throw, if I go back to, let's say, the inventory control program, you know, this is a good example of where the exceptions, the control exceptions would be. And so, you know, that's the exception. I'm sorry, let me go to the control, inventory control here. So right here, if I'm looking at the exceptions here, this is a good example of the throw. You know, if I'm coming down, it says it sets up if it's calling out the count quantity of ammo right here, it throws the inventory exception and sets it up, and it says if the total people are here and it's not between that number, it's going to throw it into the exception. And, you know, it's, first of all, if it's correct, it's going to go in and ask you how many people. If it's not correct, it's going to actually throw you into the exception, which is, you know, this program right here that goes into that. But since, you know, if they put the right calculation or the right number in there, they don't put a space or anything like that, it will actually, you know, allow them to go forward into the, you know, ammunition and set that up. And so that's where that would, you know, work in particular. On the next category, it says explain character streams versus bit streams. Really, if you look at what that is, a character stream, well, a bit stream or a byte stream, first of all, the class of a byte stream is really an ASCII-based character, you know, being able to set those variables in ASCII base. But the problem is it's between 0 and 255 or something like that. And then it only uses English characters. And so it doesn't use any other languages. Whereas when you look at a character stream class, it utilizes more of a Unicode character set. And so that allows to use the English and other language and other odd characters and so forth. And so it depends on the program when you want to use those. If you're just using strictly English-based type characters, that's when you'd use the ASCII or the byte stream and vice versa. And so that's kind of where that was, you know, hopefully that explains that, you know, well enough. The sixth category that we need to cover was the individual code. If we look at the sixth category, it says, you know, show how the understanding of how to write character data to an external file. And if I go to, let's say, the water needed, for instance, this kind of gives you an example of that. You can see down here that as you set these up, it's gonna ask, you know, basically, you know, the printout itself. And so if I'm looking at line 41, for instance, right here, it says it goes down to the display banner, and this is where it's going to capture a character, you know, the information right here. It'll say system print line. It'll print that out to the screen, and so you can capture the characters of the display banner, for instance, and the display banner is set up right down here. It puts it into that and it prints that out. And so that's where it prints that out and it says thanks for playing, etc. as it goes through the program here. But you capture that, you go through, you display the banner, and if it's incorrect, it'll say recalculate the water by choosing the option again, etc. And so you're capturing these in the individual code, and then you're displaying that as you say the system out print line and display that. Let me kind of go through, and I can let me demonstrate the program itself. If you look at, let me bring that up here. So in our program, the initial setup for the program itself is to go in, and it says, well, please enter the player's name. So we don't know who's playing the game, and so I'll just put my name on there. And it comes up with a menu, our main menu, which is start a new game, start existing game, help menu, save game. And we're just going to do the new game. And so from the new game menu, it says, let's get the inventory, launch a ship, move to a new location. And so as I go in to get the inventory, I can go in here and it says, okay, calculate how much water, food, and ammunition is needed. So if we go into water and it says, okay, let's figure this out, enter no more than 30 total number of days. So how many days at sea are we going to be? We can just say we're going to be 10 days at sea. And then it asks how many people are going to be on board. And so we're just going to use 15 to make it easy. And so it comes back and it says right here, it calculates, okay, the total number of people is 15 and 10. That means you're going to need 75 gallons. And in the calculations, it's calculating half a gallon per person per day of water. It's not a lot of water, but it's not, you know, when you're carrying a lot of water on a boat, that's a lot of weight. So, you know, that's really what we were looking at. And then it says, how much food do you need? So if you go into the food, grade F, it asks, enter the number of days at sea again. We'll just use 10 days at sea. And it says how many people, 15. And so it calculates how much food, you know, with that total number of meals that are going to be needed. And it takes that and calculates 3 meals a day. It needs 450 meals. And so we prep that in the inventory and set that in there. And then it asks how much ammunition. And that was a program that I was working on and talking about in our code. The number of people is 15 people. And what it calculates is the people is 15. The total number of guns, because there's 2 guns per person, is 30 guns. Number of bullets, because there's 10 per gun, is 300. And then that means it needs 3 kegs of powder to be able to shoot those bullets, because they're the old lock, you know, the powder type of guns. And so once you set that up, you just exit out. And you go back to the main menu, and then you get ready to launch a ship. And so you launch a ship. It says, are you ready to launch a ship? And you say, yes, you know, I want to launch a ship. And it goes up there and says, good work, team. Congratulations, we are now at sea. And so once we are at sea, then we go ahead and move to the to the location that we want to. And it says, what destination? Right here, it says, what destination do you want to go to? And I say, well, I want to go to Invisible Island. And so it actually moves that, it moves you over and creates it over there. And if we had a lot more time, we could make that really fancy and go all over the screen and do different things. But right now we just made it go to there. But if I wanted to go to Water's Edge, and this X marks the spot, you've just safely arrived at Invisible Island. Or if I want to go to Water's Edge and instead, I can go there and it takes you over to Water's Edge and it shows X marks the spot, and you can kind of go there. Once you're done, you've arrived there, then you can just exit the game. You go back to there and you go to the main menu and you can exit out, and it you know, pretty much finishes up the game. And so hopefully that helps you see. I'm going to bring my screen back. And bring that back. And so hopefully that helps you see the program that we did. And that's my presentation. I appreciate your time, and have a great day.